Hi everyone, and thank you very much for coming. I won't say the same joke about getting here as I did before, but my name's Tom Hind and I'm Senior Director of Content Development at Getty Images, and I'm joined by Richard here, who's Senior Content Editor and Pilot at Getty Images, and that may interest you, so more about that later on. So we are looking at content, trends in content, how to engage an audience today, and Richard's talk follows mine, so I'm going to be around 20 minutes, and then Richard's going to be around 20 minutes after that. Just to set some background, our creative department is based, headquartered in London. We have a unique creative research team, and that's part of the information I just wanted to feed back to you today. So we have local insight from our global network of offices, buying trends from around 80 million images sold on the Getty Images website every year. Also, they take research into latest social and visual trends, and so we work with contributors and we kind of filter those trends back to those contributors. And so what I wanted to do today was really just to talk through some of the trends that we've seen through those, and also to let Richard talk a little bit, because his talk really fits into the last trend I want to talk about. So. Really, our take on the biggest challenge in media is engagement. So it's how to engage with your audience, how to get through the surface, how to reach through the screen and actually engage with your audience. And so what we wanted to do was just talk about ways that the creative research team have seen our clients doing that, but also in the wider media landscape. So I'm going to talk about some trending creative viewpoints. So there's the glitch aesthetic, super sensory, and point of view. And so I'll just talk through those briefly, and then I'll hand over to Richard, who's going to kind of do an extended point of view, which is more about his aerial operations, so his drone piloting, which is very interesting. So I'll kick off with the glitch aesthetic, but I think the power of images is understandable, and visual storytelling obviously goes back to the caveman days, and these are visual approaches that we're seeing become more and more influential. So the glitch aesthetic really comes out of what we would see as a demand for authenticity with our audience. So what makes an image feel authentic kind of shifts and grows, and what's authentic now won't be seen as believable or real down the line. So there's a pull towards an aesthetic though that feels messy and unexpected with the glitch aesthetic. And I suppose the real basic version of this would be to have some lens flare in shots or in video. In stills, we're seeing it all over the place, and this is the kind of conservative version of that. And I guess, this is a campaign for velvet toilet paper, which is not the most exciting product, but it has that nostalgic feel. It's intentionally nostalgic because it's talking about Nan's killer apple crumble. But you can see the light leaks on this image. And Instagram's popularity can kind of be attributed to this thirst to add a layer of almost texture or something that we can get at. And it's interesting. So it's like putting something in the way that also makes us feel the image is more believable. And the influence of Instagram's kind of nostalgic authenticity, so that when we're altering the color through an Instagram, on an Instagram image, we're looking at a filter which actually drains color in many cases. It actually can make it look, give it a retro feel. And so it's interesting to see this through both the technique and also the color desaturation that's used. And I think, this kind of lens flare, the flash of sunlight, is, used to be kind of hipster only territory, and it's now ubiquitous. We see it, banks are using this, and that's when it's in the mainstream. And so, it's also in, used a lot within TV. There's an award-winning Made in Chelsea, which is on UK TV, but which uses this as a kind of joiner. So it uses subtly shot street scenes with lens flare coming through, just to join the scenes together, which are otherwise not that high-quality shots. So it's interesting to see that, and it's used to sell toothpaste, bank accounts, life insurance. And these examples are obviously from Lufthansa and JD Sports. And it's obviously, technically, it's a mistake, but it adds texture and depth. And it's now an incredibly popular part of commercial photography. And so we go on to things like this editorial, and often you see trends coming through in editorial work. So that's where there isn't necessarily the commercial pressures, or actually there's an emphasis on experimentation within that work. And this is Akim Lipov, who did a series on creatives in Cologne. And it almost is an analog feel to this, because you've got this double exposure kind of effect, which is pulls you in and it makes you relook at the shot. Is it a mistake? Is it not? And that is the glitch. And they're exciting because their nature is abstract. This is another one. And again, the fashion world often leads the way in terms of visual approaches. And this is another one where the actual product being sold is defocused. The focus is behind it. So you immediately are thinking, wow, why have they done that? What's that about? And then you're looking behind, and then you're coming back to the foreground and wondering what you should be looking at. So it definitely makes you look twice. There's something jarring about it. Again, this is a commercial example, but it's for a charity. And again, charities often are pioneering different approaches. But this is a rare genetic disease, ataxia, and it features portraits of the sufferers. And this is shot by Rankin, the photographer Rankin. But in this instance, it works well as a metaphor for the faults and errors that are a symptom of this disease. And again, it shows use of the aesthetic in the mainstream. So the final example of the glitch aesthetic is this Xbox ad, which was a very normal ad run in the UK, and one that featured a 1-second glitch. And then when slowed down, that could be seen to contain various clues. And so a lot of eagle-eyed gamers kind of picked up on this glitch and embarked on this kind of cryptographic treasure hunt. And this man here, Brad Butcher, was the first to crack the code, solve the mystery, won loads of prizes. But again, it's very interesting to see this aesthetic used, this breakdown of the digital used in a way to gain attention. And that's really the engagement factor was in there, because it was seen as, is that a mistake? Is that intentional? And I think that's where the glitch aesthetic is at its strongest, and that's where it pushes through the normal sort of polished media routine. So the second visual trend is what we're calling supersensory. And when so much of our lives are conducted via the medium of a screen through these rectangles of light, we increasingly look for images that really engage our senses and really put us in all of our senses. So it's not just about the visual, but it's imagery that makes you use different senses or imagine you're using different senses. Screens are getting smaller, so the images in a way need to have even more impact. So they need to be draw you in even more, be more powerful. And this is a very strong trend right now. And this is one example, a new campaign from Lurpak, encouraging people to get more creative in their kitchen and as they cook. And it's a celebratory ode to the adventures that lie in every kitchen and every meal. And basically casts food as a landscape that's waiting to be discovered and uncovered. And so there's tracking shots through the outer layers of a pumpkin, a pomegranate opening up and the seeds bursting out. And touch has become this incredibly important sense. As we swipe through the day, we long for the tactile. This was another example from GE called Spring Break It. And so this was a very visceral experience where they used the equipment they would usually use to test their products, jet engines, etc. And they used them on regular household items and just really crushed them, broke them, pulled them apart. But again, it was like this almost joyful kind of visceral experience where you're seeing something beyond the screen itself. So you're going beyond the screen. This is Lens Crafters, and they launched a very bold and creative campaign that encourages consumers to sort of marvel at the roles that their eyes play in their emotional life and sort of more generally on their health. And so it's distinguished by very striking images and a challenging language here, and it really emphasizes the emotional essence of the eyes there. This is another recent campaign for Schwartz, who make herbs and spices, obviously. And this is where you have an interesting element called synthesasia, or where you've got one sense being replaced by another. And so this is highlighting the different blends and seasonings obviously offered by the brand. And it features coloured explosions in slow motion. And I guess you could say that this was kind of pioneered or precursored by the Sony Bravia ball drop ad, which was mid-2000s. And that was seen as very challenging, avant-garde in its day, because it focused on the sense that you got. So it was focusing on your visual sense of colour within the ad. So it was seen as quite daring to move away from the benefits of the product and just focus on the senses within the product. But this is now commonplace. So we're seeing this move away from the benefits of a specific product, but to, okay, how does that relate to the senses? How does that relate to how people actually engage with the product? And so this is now, Sony then followed that up with a paint explosion ad, which used a tower block. And again, this is similar, but it's now in your household spices area. So it's interesting how it's moved forward. So, you know, how do you dramatize flavor when it's invisible and silent? Well, this was a really interesting, the same company, using a really interesting technique which allowed you to, via Bluetooth, actually hear the flavors. So basically, each herb and spice depicted in the artwork had its own chord, and then you could actually use the artwork to make sound. So again, it's this, you know, taste, sound, hearing, and you know, there is definitely an increased mixing of all of our senses in terms of how advertisers are using media. So the last aesthetic is POV, or point of view. And you know, this is something that's long been of interest, you know, the story told through the perspective of the narrator. The subjective viewpoint is very immersive, you know, the first person narrator, and it allows the audience to experience an event themselves. So again, it's kind of cutting through that, having a story told for you. It's putting you in the actual frame there. And so audiences are captivated by filling the shoes of another person. And creativity has also become more democratized. You know, we're seeing that through our partnerships with Flickr, with Vimeo, and smartphones enable us to shoot content inexpensively now. So it democratizes the production itself. And social media obviously provides a platform to make these videos and photographs readily available to global audiences. So technology like Google Glass is obviously really fueling this approach and will really bring this kind of first-person viewpoint into the mainstream. This is a really interesting short film for Google Glass that shows that it's not just for urbanites, you know, your hipsters, but it's actually can be of real use as a research tool. So it's shot in Nepal, and it stars Sabita Mala, and she's a research officer for the World Wildlife Fund. And it shows her going about her work, which includes tracking rhinos and tigers, and she uses Google Glass to actually capture imagery, work out where she is. And the short film features beautiful footage, but essentially it's a product demo for Google Glass, featuring a lot of imagery from her distinct point of view. And again, this is that point of view. And this is something we're just going to be seeing a lot more of, this idea of hands in the frame as if you are the camera, your body is the camera. And so, you know, the unexpected angles, the human head height point of view, rather than lower, higher, etc. And then gritty close-ups as well. You know, imperfect shots that become slightly unfocused, framed at odd angles. And that all adds to what we were talking about earlier, the feeling of authenticity, because most people are used to taking these kind of photos on their mobile devices. So, you know, we think this kind of visual language will become an increasingly commonplace part of you know, how we actually visually communicate. This is obviously, you know, hugely influenced by GoPro as well. You know, they've just introduced an action camera that can shoot 4K video at an affordable price point. So, you know, it's now reachable for most consumers. And they had a camera, this is from the Red Bull Drop with Felix Baumgartner, and it, you know, they uploaded that onto YouTube and it had thousands and thousands of hits, but it's an amazing example of that technology in action. And again, this first person point of view, you feel immersed in it. This is an interesting example. This is a campaign for Guy Cotton, who are a fishing gear company, and they aim to raise awareness of the importance of, you know, wearing a life jacket at sea. So what they did was to create a very immersive experience. So you have a short film with two friends, and then things go wrong and one falls overboard, and you have to help him stay afloat, you know, and scroll continuously. But you get this, again, it's this first person point of view. You're seeing hands, you know, moving through the water, and you're trying to help him stay afloat, keep sight of the yacht there. And I think there's a lot that, you know, brands can learn and that we'll increasingly see around this kind of very immediate first-person point of view. So, you know, we can't talk about point of view without talking about the ubiquitous selfie. It's kind of point of view's wacky cousin in a way. And this is a campaign for the Cape Times, and I don't know if you've seen this one, but it basically recreated famous shots as if they were a selfie. So claiming you know you can't get closer to the news here. So you know I won't get into the psychology behind the selfie and the ever-increasing plague of narcissism that they've fostered, but it's an interesting phenomenon and it's being used more and more. So in terms of you know actual commercial usage, this is Warby Parker eyewear, and you know this is something where they had an issue where people wouldn't necessarily buy glasses online because again it's a very tactile experience, so they needed something to combat that. So they actually sent a selection of frames for users, key users to try out, and then people were asked to share a selfie, you know, with them and actually get the votes from their friends as to which they should purchase. So we always tend to use Dove a lot in our visual trends. Hugely influential and often mocked as well, but they're the first to often jump onto these trends, and they recently ran a selfie campaign aiming to use selfies as a way to kind of reclaim definitions of beauty, which is great. And you know, this is rather than consuming beauty trends, you know, social media puts the power in people's hand. So whether you find it effective or not, it's increasing power in these kind of campaigns. And this was a partner of ours, Samsung. You know, this was a way of fostering engagement at the Oscars, and this was forwarded on Twitter more than 2 million times. Caused it to melt down, and you know, it ensured the coverage of the awards, you know, focused almost less on the winners than on the selfie itself. So very interesting use of, you know, promotional by Samsung, and again it's content marketing or product placement, but it was done in the right way and it was very well received because it was done in a light-hearted way and not too obviously. And you get interaction like this with it, which is, you know, very interesting, and people want to play around with it. And you know, the selfie really continues to bulldoze other trends in its wake. It's opened up increasing, you know, opportunities for brands to market themselves. You know, and you know, consumers will happily provide a selfie to a brand or back a campaign where it fits in with their own interests and desires. So this is American Idol, and this has been called the most impactful show in the history of television. Whether you like it or hate it, it definitely has had an impact. I think you've got The Voice over here soon, which we'll be look forward to. So in terms of what they did was to ask for viewers to position themselves in front of the TV and take selfies with the stars there, with often distressing results. But again, you know, it's a use of the selfie to provoke engagement, and whether you find the campaign effective or not, again, there's clearly power in that, and there's ever increasing power in campaigns that tell stories from this kind of first-person point of view. So in terms of the key takeaways here, as we get to the end of this, you know, there's no doubt, and we're bound to say this at Getty Images, but you know, there's no doubt that powerful visuals, you know, do evoke emotions. They do create deeper engagement for brands. You know, in terms of what we've seen with the glitch aesthetic, authentic visuals are very key. They're not necessarily perfect and slick. There's something tangible about them. Using visuals with high sensory values, this idea of the super sensory, you know, that go beyond the screen and actually reach out. People want to interact with them. And also, you know, using visuals that immerse you in the experience. And that's the point of view that we've just talked through. So that's almost it from me. So before handing over to Richard, I just want to give a quick plug to The Curve, which is what our creative research team, you know, really work hard on creating. And there's some great articles there. Most recent issue is a content marketing issue, which is really well done, and it's real insight into trends, not just, you know, what we're seeing, but from the wider environment, the wider media landscape. So now I'm going to hand over to Richard, talking about point of views. He's actually been working hard on producing content with a very unique point of view, which is something that is an aerial. So he's now become a drone pilot
Hi everyone, I'm Richard Newstead and I'm a senior content editor at Getty Images. I've been there for about 15 years and working for about 10 years in the creative department, and I'm also a contributing photographer. So for about 6 years I've also been submitting content to Getty Images. My passion for photography has gone a long way back actually, and it's led me to a form of aerial photography. I spent a lot of time experimenting with kites and helium balloons to try and get a camera in the air. And didn't get any very good results, and then quickly moved on to the world of multi-rotors and drones, so you'll see where it takes you. A quick kind of misconception that people do, often called drones, and drones is quite a negative term for the type of work we were using with them. They're actually called UAVs, or Unmanned Arial Vehicles, and another term is Small Unmanned Arial Vehicles, or Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems. Lots of verbs for you. And moving on, basically, to start with, like I said, I was on the internet, it must have been about 60 months ago, and I was trying to find a way of getting a camera up in the air. Found a kite, that didn't work too well. Tried with a balloon, and that didn't work too well over Hampstead Heath, letting the wind carry the camera for me. And then came across what were known as multi-rotors, and they're basically tricopters, quadcopters, hexacopters, and octocopters. And these are generally the craft that are used to carry the camera. And basically the tri, quad, hexa and octo just denotes the amount of actual rotors the crafts have got. Moving on, and basically this started off as a hobby really in my spare time, and I learnt to build the craft. It was quite geeky, learning how to build the kits from China and from Japan and from the UK, different parts, and then literally just strapping a camera on and getting it up in the air and really just starting to get to grips with how to shoot from the air. Biggest problem I came up against though was I quickly learned that I was going to require a license to shoot commercially. So it was a big kind of brick wall to come up against. I was all ready to go, fly over London and take loads of amazing pictures and sell them. And then I was told, well actually you can't do that unless you have a full pilot's license. So luckily Getty Images, I was actually going to do it myself, but my directors, Tom and my other directors in London, basically backed me and gave me some financial backing to go through a course with the Civil Aviation Authority. And also to cover things like third-party insurance when I'm flying. And the course basically took about 6 or 7 months, and it's called a BNUC S, and that was with the Civil Aviation Authority, and it involved various things. I'll move on, sorry, I'll move on to the slide. That's the craft I'm currently flying at the moment, that's a hexacopter. And this down here is what we call a brushless gimbal, and it's a bit like a Steadicam for those that know a bit about film and video. You take a camera out, and to keep that super straight on a horizon line, you go out with generally a Steadicam. The gimbals allowed us to do that on things like drones, on hexacopters, octocopters, and also on handheld, with handheld SLRs as well. And the course was a really interesting overview. The predominant kind of use for drones at the moment is for media, so from creative imagery to reportage, sports. But I also met quite a lot of people on the course. There's people working in search and rescue, in agriculture, in surveying work. So it was quite interesting to see the types of people that are using that. And you've probably seen people like Amazon who are courting around with the idea of starting to deliver things with drones. And again, there's people on that course just looking into those areas. My licence now allows me to fly in the UK with permission, and I can also fly in Europe with special permissions from those aircraft associations in Europe. So if I was to fly in the Netherlands, it would be a case of getting special permission, and you'd actually have to set up what they call a temporary aerodrome to fly from. The other thing is, yeah, it's in its infancy still, so it's still very much a growing area. There's around 500 pilots probably globally at the moment flying commercially, and we'll probably see this grow probably tenfold over the next few years as people start to get a feel for this type of media. It's really undercutting traditional aerial photography from helicopters. It's a lot cheaper. The accesses, the permissions, is a lot more accessible when shooting around areas, and a lot less noise. And what you can do is actually you can shoot close proximity. So a standard helicopter can only get so low. You can actually take an unmanned aerial vehicle actually close up to your model if you've got their permission. So you can fly from very close to someone to flying out to get the context of the area they're in. And there's a few basic things. So now I've got my license, it doesn't basically allow me to go out and just shoot anywhere. There's basic codes of practice that I need to follow, and those are 400 feet max altitude, so that's as high as I can go, and that leaves 100 feet separation between me and manned aircraft. Then there's a 500-metre restriction on horizontal vertical axis, so it's basically as far as you can see, but you always have to fly with what they call line of sight, so you can actually see the craft. It can't go beyond line of sight. You can't just fly over people. You generally need their permission, and if there's going to be people around in an area or a location you're shooting at, you need to be 50 metres away from them. And then if that amount of people is 1,000 people or more, which is what they call a congested area, you then have to be 150 metres away from them. If you wanted to fly over those types of people, you'd need their permission, prior permission. And the only other thing is you have to stay 2 nautical miles away from airports unless you've got prior permission as well. So it's just generally staying out of trouble. Yeah. Quick slide. This is from my flight test site. It basically gives you an idea when I go and fly in an area, I'll check on an air traffic chart map to see whereabouts the area is and also see whereabouts in the airspace you are, so I can see whereabouts other airplanes are. And I can quickly show you an example. This is a park I flew out of in London, and that's the park. And actually, when you're looking at an air traffic chart map, you can actually see this is Heathrow's airspace on the left of where I was flying, and to the right you had City Airport. So both airports had to be contacted in order to fly out of there. And this was me. Basically, the Civil Aviation Authority do a series of presentations and courses on updates for pilots, and this was something that was held at the Aeronautical Society a few months back, and it was basically regarding the regulations when flying in congested areas. So it's quite strict codes of practice, but it can be done. There's just certain areas along the Thames you can't fly because of ambulances and then police helicopters. I've been talking a lot about safety. The course that I went on was really about 99% safety. It was all about safety, and then about 1% about taking video or footage. And this is just a quick example of when it goes wrong and how it goes wrong. This is 11 kilogram octocopter, so very, very big. Big SLR camera underneath it, and they were flying over a crowd. This was in Brazil, so he was an unlicensed pilot, and they had a motor loss. And you'll see, that's it taking a dive into the crowd, which isn't ideal. So basically it's why there's so much regulation in the UK to stop these type of things happening. And I can basically, yeah, it's creative stills. It's basically giving us new areas of access. One of our biggest problems or issues when we have clients come to us is them wanting to look at things in a different way. And as soon as you get a camera up in the air, you really do look at the world in a very different way, a very different perspective. And it's basically opening up a new area in stabilised video and access, which traditional helicopters didn't allow for. These are some examples of stills actually. We've currently got quite a few photographers currently shooting aerial footage for us, so we've already got quite a large variation of diverse footage and stills that we've got for our customer base already. And this is a classic bird's eye kind of a car lot. Everything gets very graphic in nature when looking from above. This is the classic kind of 30-degree cherry picker shot, which you'd have normally done on a crane maybe. Really nice sense of shadow, good time of day. And again overhead, this was actually shot from a kite. This is the rice fields in China. And this was another one shot from a kite. This was some kids drawing at a community project. And currently as an editor, traditionally I've been working with stills, but this has got me quite excited about video. So as a pilot, I've actually met a network of pilots from the course I was on, and also perusing around on internet forums, trying to work out why things aren't working, or how I can get something to work. And through that I've reached out to different pilots in the UK and also in Europe, and we've started to actually gain content from those pilots as well. So I've been working with our video director to get that content online. So it's not just me flying, and we'll better get a really good diverse kind of range of work from around the world. And here's some examples of work I've been shooting over the last 12 months or so. This was before I had a license, so none of it's really commercially available, but it was all taken as a hobbyist, so I get to keep it for my own love. And this was Hampstead Heath. This was my mum actually swims in this pond, my mother, every day, and I wanted to produce a big print for her study, so I went and flew above Hampstead Heath for her. And this is Regent's Park. This is just up the road from our offices in London. And again, I went up there with a colleague at lunchtime, and I often spend a lot of time in this park as a photographer at ground level, and I've never really been able to capture the essence of what the park looks like. And as soon as I flew this drone up in the air, you really captured the whole essence of the park. You really got a sense of where we were in London, the city in the background, the Regency homes, and just the general sense of the park, the people in the park and beautiful shadows. Quick overhead of a pitch, football pitch, to give you kind of sense of what you can do close proximity. This was on Primrose Hill, again in North London. And again, Hampstead Heath. This is my street. I live here. So this is just me doing some observations of my area. And one of my favourite pictures, this was from a community allotment, and this really kind of excited me about what I wanted to be doing, giving areas a sense of identity. You can often walk through this and it wouldn't look like anything. And here, every single little patchwork, every allotment is everyone's own, so it's really that sense of identity in the image.
Can you also use audio on the drones?
We can do, yeah, but the problem is you hear a lot of helicopter noise, the actual sound of the rotors. They are electric, yeah. You can hear whining. You can have a mic on a model for them to be speaking, but you'd have to do some clever audio work to maybe turn up the volumes on it. What we got next? This is me flying the drone, actually. This is a quick shot, a quick example of me. It was a few months back on a very icy morning. It was about 6:30 in the morning. I wanted to go out and get the morning sun. So you can see me flying into the sun there. This is the shot from the copter, so you can see what that was capturing when I was flying it. And this is straight off camera, so no post-production.
What kind of camera was this?
It's a Panasonic GH3. Yeah, and we're going to actually move on to a GH4, so we'll be able to shoot 4K video soon. And we're just working on the conversion of that. On my travels, when I go and fly in an area, something I've come across is the term droney. You've all known the term selfie. This is the actual term droney. Whenever I'm flying, I often get people running over to me and saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What is that? How high can it fly? Has it got a camera on it? It has got a camera on it. How do I make one? Where did you find out about this?" And basically I've been capturing these pictures of people as and when, and found the term dronies being termed in the last few months by Twitter and Instagram and co. This moves on to a very random project from about a month ago. Nike actually contacted us. They wanted us, they were doing an event in a park in London with 10,000 women running through the night, a 5K run. And they were like, "We'd love to have a drone flying over all the women." And I explained to them we couldn't fly at night, and also there'd be too many people for us to fly over without permission. So we came up with an idea to have a helium balloon made for them with a Nike logo on, which would illuminate at night, and then we hung 4 cameras from the pockets. But it was, as you saw from the footage, I can show you quickly again, it was very windy. There was like 60-mile-an-hour gusts, so it was the windiest day for about 3 years. And we didn't get, there wasn't one moment when we were flying, it was supposed to just sit in the air with helium, just still, but instead it was like flying a kite. It was crazy. And we had to tie it to the van because we were being pulled away. And I think this is going to finish off with some final footage. This is just an overview of some tidbits of work. Yeah, we've seen that. Let me take you through to... Yeah, this will give you a sense of just some test footage we've been doing, working with my cameraman, the type of work we can do. And you can see he can pan on the camera as well while I'm piloting the craft as well. And you can get a sense about the speed, so it can travel at about 45 miles an hour when it's at full power, which can give a good sense of driving in a car or in a train or on a bike. So again, this is a picture we've been flying a lot in.
Those shots that you're never allowed to use commercially, can you put them up under a Creative Commons license?
It's a good question. No, because I'd still not have had permission from the landowner to fly on the site. So it's okay to use just purely as hobby photography, yeah. Every time I'm now going out to fly on a site, I'm always making sure I've got permissions, just so I don't get that amazing shot that I can't do anything with, yeah.
When you get to a public park, there's no...
Well, parks you'd have permission from the local council.
Oh.
So it's, yeah, it isn't too hard. It's generally not too not too hard to get.
What's your dream location?
It's a good question. I'd love to go and fly in somewhere like Iceland and just do kind of like environmental study of the land. Currently, actually, in Iceland, there's no licenses required, so I could actually go there and just travel the land and fly. So it's something I may think about doing if possible. Yeah, I think we're seeing quite a lot of pilots from around the world go out to areas such. Actually, Brazil was an area. The BBC just went out there a few months back to capture a lot of footage for the World Cup. You've probably seen a lot of the footage. And Brazil have now put limitations on flying in Brazil, so they went there at just the right time. This was me doing a survey. This is my parents' roof, so I was doing a survey of their tiles, just as a test.
Richard, have you already got requests from TV producers, like using it in reality series?
We've had a few requests from customers through Getty Images, which I won't repeat now because we're still in a couple of conversations about those. But I can actually mention one which is with the National Trust. They want us to go and cover a lot of their land in the UK, which will be a really good, what I call a land grab, because I'll get permission to go and shoot in quite a lot of areas in the UK. And basically in a lot of situations I'll offer the work for them, for their use, and then so we can use it for our use as well. So that it's kind of like I'll scratch your back and you can scratch ours, so we both get something out of it. I think is that. Thank you.